As I was growing up, I was always a curious child, already drawn to adventurous things and ideas. I was known as the adventurous child, the one that always decided to try something new or figure something out. And this directly played a role in my learning, reading, and writing. As I began to get older, I would always turn towards books either on science fiction or on topics that particularly interested me. This showed through as I began to become more interested in the Spanish language in high school. I had always honored my Hispanic heritage from my father's side of the family, and now was the time that I wanted to continue to pursue the Spanish language along with the English language. Please enjoy this video as I take you through my journey of learning to read and write not only in English but in Spanish.
We keep this love in a photograph.
Hi, I'm Karen Flores, and I'm the mother of Jessica Flores.
And I am Dan Flores. I am her father.
Eyes are never closing, hearts are never broken.
Dad was at work most of the time, and I was fortunate enough to be able to stay home with the girls. And we did a lot of reading activities. We went to the Woodside Library story times, and we also had a lot of different books at home, and we would try always to read a book at night before bed.
And the good part was, even though you did a lot of the reading, I could kind of sit in there and kind of play with the kids and laugh and make silly, scary noises and things as you were reading the books, especially if they were adventurous books.
Yeah, and that really reminds me that some of the books that the kids liked the best were the silliest books. So we used to have the Richard Scarry books where there were pictures and also, little silly words, but they would say crazy things like, "Never pick your nose at the dinner table, ha ha ha." And then we would just laugh and joke around and try to make the reading really fun for the kids. And she really liked puzzles, and so we tried to get some of the puzzles that actually had words in them or states in them, so she was kind of putting those types of thoughts and processes together.
All the Barney books were a big part of the kid's life because he was such an interesting character, and it was such a hot item when all the kids are little. And we even went to see Barney live at one of the shows. I think that was in San Francisco. I can't remember exactly each specific story, but I remember Barney was a big deal in terms of just kind of living your life every day talking about Barney this and Barney that.
So they did like the books that were about Barney, and so we would get different books, and they would, obviously, as you read them over and over, they would start to memorize them, which helped them begin to learn to read the words and recognize words. But yeah, they had quite a little selection of the Barney books.
Should we sing the Barney song?
No, I don't think we should.
Okay.
We'll save that for another time.
Okay.
Also, as Jessica was a little bit older in school, I think she was in probably around the 3rd grade, she got a particular book about horses called Ride the Wind, and she must have read that book over and over again. It was kind of an adventurous story about horseback riders, and she's always enjoyed riding, and that kind of sparked her to really start to enjoy her reading a lot more. Jessica's dad, Dan, actually wrote a book, so he was very helpful in helping the girls learn their writing skills.
Well, when I was growing up, I have to say I didn't write as much as I should, and then I decided later in life I wanted to write a book, so I went back and got all kinds of tutoring and read all kinds of books, and so it was very helpful with Jessica just to understand, sentence structure and the different styles of writing and all that. So I was able, I think, to critique her writing and kind of show her a system for writing as opposed to just looking at pure vocabulary or maybe just wrong grammar here and there, but kind of give a style and a system that you have to understand for writing.
How you kissed me under the
Well, I think that the school did a really good job of exposing the kids to a wide range of authors, a wide range of styles of writing, and of periods of literature. I think that one thing I noticed was Jessica in particular really liked certain styles of writing. She liked exciting books, science fiction,
Yes, that's true.
and some of the horse-related books. And so in her freshman year, she was assigned to read Jane Eyre, and I personally felt like that was such a significant book and such a wonderful book, and she just did not want to get through that book and just kept slowly trying to go through that. And so I think that it was an interesting time in trying to have her sort of understand that kind of literature and motivate her to see the importance of it, but she did get through it, and I think she remembers some of it.
I was going to say similar things. That the exciting books, the adventure books, those types of things were always books that were easier for Jessica to read. I think she was always a little bit resistant to read something if she saw no point to reading it. But one of the things I think you have to understand in preparing yourself for college is learning how to do certain types of things, even though maybe they're not always as exciting as certain types of books are, because it gives you a wider range, a different style of writing, just kind of a different flavor for how books are written. And they're all good books, they just have a different kind of
Yeah.
style in terms of what a different audience might like.
Right, it's perfect, because an example exactly of what Dad's saying is when she started reading The Hunger Games, which I think was in her 6th grade, she was so excited about those books she finished about a whole book in one day, whereas when it was something she wasn't interested in, it took quite a long time to get through it.
That's true.
Loving can heal.
You were very dedicated. I can really tell that you were studying the rules of grammar very well. You also were very thorough whenever you had an assignment for reading articles, and then you guys had to discuss the articles in class. We did a lot of free discussion that showed that you had good command of vocabulary and the grammar. That was very impressive. I would say weaknesses, probably the biggest one would have been just trying to stay on top of the entire broad spectrum of class subjects that we were covering, because it was an intense class. It's very important that by the time you take an AP class, especially in another language, your writing and reading skills are strong already. You're very specific. You were very factual and didn't deviate from the subject as much. There's some other students that tend to answer quickly and then give their own way of looking at things. You stayed within the context, and that helped you in the class, because the class is to show that you know the material. And you can think on your own, but you actually have to know that you understand what the prompts and whether it's an essay or a short answer are, and you did that. When you read a lot, your vocabulary develops quite strongly, and therefore when you speak it shows, and when you write it shows also. So I would say that it's the same for both languages, and I do agree 100%. The more you read, the more you understand. There's a famous quote that somebody said, I don't know who said it. It said, first you learn to read, and then you read to learn. The amount you wrote did help you. You guys had to write a lot. I had to read a lot. But it does help you, tying with the previous question, that the more you do it, it becomes second nature.
Inside these pages, you just hold me.
I think as a family, certainly we've all thought Spanish is really a critical language in California, even more so since my husband Dan is half Hispanic, and I think it is something that's always been really important to him.
So over the years, I've tried to improve my Spanish, and even though I'm not fluent, I do try and practice it on a regular basis. I speak well enough to communicate with somebody, but certainly not like a college-educated person or even a high school-educated person, more like a kid that speaks the language. But I've tried to convey to Jessica how important it is to have that second language, and if you're going to have a second language, Spanish is probably the most important language to have, at least in California and the Western United States. Regardless of how well you do academically, if you have that where you can really communicate effectively, not necessarily like a native speaker, but where you can just go into a group of people and have a perfectly good conversation, it really, I think in my mind, almost guarantees that you're going to have a good future and a good career, regardless of what you go into, whether it's the sciences or communications or anything. I just think that it's just going to be an absolute dominant language, and people should embrace it and accept it, and it'll just absolutely add to your future. So I hope it's something that stays with you always. I'm very proud of that part of my family.
Only thing that makes us feel alive.
Well, obviously you've grown and matured a tremendous amount. I know there's another comment that I'm gonna make a little bit later, so Mommy, why don't you go ahead and talk about this a little more in detail, and I'll talk about the other part.
Well, I think one of the perfect examples of how Jessica has progressed as a person as well as a writer is really how she handled all of her college applications. Jessica applied to 13 really top colleges, and they all had special essays and supplemental essays and additional essays, and on top of that she applied for a large number of scholarships which all had yet additional essays. And I thought the quality of her work, obviously her motivation to get it all done and manage all of these deadlines, but the quality of the essays I think was so different than when she had begun Notre Dame as a freshman. And the quality of those essays brought her in as a finalist to many of the scholarships and some of those that she did achieve.
Right.
So I think we saw a really big transition in her capabilities, and I attribute that to the learning that she had in her high school years.
I swear it will get easier. Remember that with every